I turned on my LinkedIn too, if you don't want to type all of that in, but I'll put this down here. So it's great to see all of you. Christy Johnson, I run a group called Pacific Northwest Idea. It's very much grassroots. Hey, I see like Mara and people who are in the group. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about it because we're always looking for new people to participate. And part of the genesis for this group getting together was if you look around the Pacific Northwest, we're going to tell, if you look around the Pacific Northwest.
There's more networking at the end, so please be quiet so we can give our attention to the presenters. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Okay, so if you look around the Pacific Northwest, and we're a very progressive area, there's lots of people with master's degrees, highly educated, but the diversity that we see in our government, in our for-profit companies, and our nonprofits doesn't mirror society. So we're like, that's puzzling. Let's do something about it. And so that's what this group is meant to do. My person from Boston, we actually looked at Boston, which is one of the cities that's actually made some progress on this, and people there were really great in talking to us, and they said, you need to get people from the federal, state, and local governments, nonprofits of all sizes, small, medium, and large businesses, and then funders to get involved. So that's what this group does. It meets once a month. I want to give you a little bit of data because I'm a giant nerd. So I'm going to give you a teeny tiny bit of this and then tell you about ways you can get involved if you want to. So really this whole idea is, wouldn't it be amazing if this was a region where people could thrive regardless of their gender, their race, their socioeconomic status, their sexual orientation, all sorts of other things, and it isn't right now. So that's the ideal vision that this group has. And then, there's some research that we've done, and then we also will comb through the meta-analyses. So if you're curious about something, you can bring it to the group and say, hey, I've been wondering about X, Y, and Z. So for example, something that actually just released today in the Stanford Social Innovation Review was around internships, because people were sharing in this group during the sharing time that there's quite a few companies in this area who do unpaid internships. And we're like, that doesn't seem like it's very equitable, right? Because only certain types of people from certain types of families can afford to do an unpaid internship. And they're really important for a whole host of reasons. So the research is driving like what it is that we do. And sometimes we won't know the answer. So that's when this group will get together and put together a small task force and comes up with things that might matter. Part of what's behind this, I know there's a lot of words on the slide. I didn't follow the requirements. But I wanted to orient you mostly to the bottom. So this comes from some interviews with diverse people in places where you wouldn't expect them. So venture capital, private equity, C-level leadership, board members of publicly traded companies. Again, like typically not diverse at all. But for the people who made it through, we did these long interviews and then coded them, or a bunch of PhDs coded them, and we were looking for pivotal moments. And then these are things that the group ends up talking about. So you can see on the bottom, it's kind of financial wellness, which most kids' spending habits are set by age 7, for those of you who are parents in the room, going all the way up to executive sponsorship. So is there somebody who puts your name in the hat for a board position? Because that's typically how it happens. And so giving you a bit of a sense for what the format of the group ends up looking like, we meet once a month for about 90 minutes. It's at Weber Shanwick's conference room at 818 Stewart. And there's a host of things that we do. So the 3 goals that we're striving for are illuminating best practices, things that are working. We've also done some data collection in a few special cases. A second would be around support. So I think this is most people's favorite part of the meetings, where people come bring a challenge that they're dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion to the group, and then the group will problem solve with them. And then the last part is around educate. So that might be where we delve into a topic. So everything that's shared stayed confidential, and we've had some crazy stuff shared. I mean, like one would be, and I won't go into specific details, but to give you a sense for how the group can support each other, a woman at a major company who runs the ERGs, she found out from National they're actually getting rid of all the specific ones and going to just like one, everybody all together. We won't have female focus, or we don't have different races. And so the group helped her think through how she could message that to her team in a respectful way. Similarly, people from the governor's office will come. They often have really interesting data, and they will say things like, gosh, we don't necessarily know the best way to present this. So will you take a look and give some suggestions? The answer was infographics. So there's some things like that that end up happening, and there's really cool people in the room as well as connections that are made. The last thing I'll leave you with, I might get through this pretty quickly. The group they want to do a project. And so this was this idea of, could we get a diverse group, because it is, right? I mean, the government thinks really different from the nonprofit folks, really different from the funders, and then the high-tech companies, or if you get somebody from a completely different industry, the conversations are fascinating. So we decided to do a project, and this first project is focused on a concept called micro-volunteering. So we've done some surveying, and we actually found, and we originally were thinking it might be people who are new to the region, because Seattle is kind of a hard market to move into, some of you might find. Hopefully not. But being involved in your community can be a great way to meet new people. And what we found when we were interviewing is it's a small percentage, it's like 5 to 10% of folks who are involved in volunteering. But all sorts of organizations want help. And then at the same time, it's hard to find something that can take only an hour or two. Like, let's say that's all you have to give. And you won't believe how many times people said soup kitchens. We're like, soup kitchens are fantastic. But at the end of the day, is what you're able to offer, does it equal the magnitude of the problem? And maybe you're a data scientist and you could help a company look at their data, a nonprofit look at their data, or maybe you're really good with digital marketing and you could help them there. Or honestly, like sometimes some of these nonprofits that are doing really, really good work need a financial model or a cash flow model. So are there ways that people can give their skills and their talents in a meaningful way in an hour or two a month? So that's what the current project is. If you're interested, hit me up, because we need like 1,000 people to let us know how they think about volunteering and where they look and if this concept of micro-volunteering is even interesting. If you want to join the group, it's open to everybody. We don't exclude anyone, and it meets monthly, and the next meeting is coming up July 25th. So with that, I'll open it up for questions, right? 3 minutes? You have any questions? Yeah.
What's the name of the group again?
Pacific Northwest Idea, so inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. We think all 4 are really important. Yeah.
What's the multi-volunteer?
Micro-volunteer, yeah.
What is that, and what's the day-to-day like that?
Yeah, well, it's this whole idea of like, if you actually do a scan right now, let's say you want to get involved and volunteer. There's big projects you can take on at sites like Catch a Fire. Those are cool, right? You could be a board member. That's a pretty big commitment. But what if you just want to give back for an hour or 2 a week? How do you find an organization that needs some help? And how can we make sure that they can deal with only an hour or 2? And there's all sorts. I mean, K-12 and post-secondary, honestly, like they really want industry folks to come in and speak. Like that's an easy thing that you can do. So trying to make it easier to connect. And then we're obviously testing everything right now and figuring out what's going to look like. Yeah. What else do you have for me? Yeah.
What's your background that drew you to lead this group?
Oh, what's my background? Do you look up on LinkedIn? It's super random. I was a public high school teacher, economics and math, actually really focused on getting diversity into those fields because they're 20 years ago. I was like, oh, they're going to be super important. Quickly realized our public schools have a whole host of challenges, was doing work around Washington State, which this state is really different if you get outside of the Mount Rainier circle, and a little bit internationally as well. So didn't feel equipped to have systematic change at like 24. Went back to graduate school, did 2 masters. Didn't work as a barista. And then I actually went to a consulting firm called McKinsey. So I was doing growth and innovation strategy, which I loved. But honestly, like when I had my daughter, the model's really, really hard if you have children, and you want to see them. So hopped around and followed different McKinsey alums in operating roles. And actually, one thing I should add is while I was at McKinsey, they were doing their research on diversity matters, centered leadership. And it was great. It was really important. And I also felt like they were kind of looking at the upper ranks, but they weren't going all the way through the pipeline. So I decided to start Artemis 4 years ago, which is the day job, strategy consulting in the mid-market. Never thought I'd start a company. That's a whole other story that I can tell you all over coffee sometime. But this was really like, I love this region. I think there's so many amazing things about the Pacific Northwest, and there's really cool people that work here, and we have progressive roots, and just wanted to be a catalyst. And I tend to, my background all the way through has been, can you get people to take a few small steps, and can you make sure it's grounded in the research, and then support them so we're all learning? That's what I love about this community as well, right? Like, we might as well help each other out, especially on a topic like this. So that's a little bit of the background.
One more question.
One more question. Got anything for me? You're being so nice. Oh, yes, one more.
I'm working on a project that's kind of related about microgiving. It's like a small app project about microgiving back in Boston. Have you guys had any conversations about microgiving versus, it wasn't about time, it was buying someone a baseball mitt who lost their baseball mitt and couldn't play baseball anymore on their team. They were benched for the season because they couldn't afford to do that. So microgiving in that way instead of time. You guys discuss microgiving instead of microgiving your time?
Yeah, no, we totally did. And then when we surveyed K-12, post-secondary, and the nonprofits, 2/3 of them said they'd prefer time than money. And they had a list of things that they wanted, which is absolutely the skill set that people here have. It's data science, cybersecurity, programming, tech, AI, ML, digital strategy. So we decided to go more with that angle. And we'd heard, and when we did a bit of a scan, it seemed like there was more going on in the micro-giving space. So we were like, well, what about the micro time giving, the micro volunteering? So let's go there. Okay. So that was wonderful. Thank you. It's good to see all of you.